So I want to get this thing over here, I guess. Our board.
Okay, everybody.
What's the coach's name again?
Coach here?
There's all the boxer over there.
Chris?
Chris?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Krista, not through your headphones.
Pardon me?
Sound is through your headphones.
Well, no wonder it sounded not good.
Oh, Molly.
Now is it through my headphones?
How is your file too big?
Yeah, only a 50 KB can fit. No, not
Where
good.
does it say that?
Right here.
Nadine.
Oh,
Is she on there?
Oh.
Is there Nadine on there? Or that's us?
Yeah, that's. Hang on, I'm gonna change the.
I'm here.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, we're just we're gonna be on here pretty quick. Can you see me?
I can see you.
Oh, okay.
So that would be.
Oh, right there.
I don't have my camera on.
Put it on. We'll see how I look. Hello.
Start video.
What happened to that big camera you had? The other- This
it
works
was just
better?
the tripod. I just switched the tripods.
Oh. Do I have to kind of slouch? We're good. You just shoot it. The bottom.
Well,
There you go. Hey, like, there you go. Well, we're just gonna wait a couple more minutes and then we're gonna get everybody. Last week we had about 8, eh? 8 join us, and we're just gonna make sure that we're all on and people are. Nadine, I thought you'd be here live. Yeah, I thought maybe you'd bring 3 friends with you.
I'm gonna go send everybody.
Julius, you're looking very 64.
Yeah, I'm 64. 64.
Did you have a good celebration on Friday?
I did. We went out to the big city of Calgary and we spent a couple of days up there. Very enjoyable.
and you ran?
Oh, early that morning, and I'm still kind of feeling the effects. That was a 5-mile. It wasn't so much the length in that; it was the terrain, right? Downhill, and there's a couple of coulees and so forth and that. And my, it's the terrain. I can run 5 kilometers in it, but it's that terrain that gets to me. And my knees are not as young anymore, right? And my back, oh, I'm gonna tell you. And I'm running a race this coming Saturday again. It's called the Run for the Pumpkins, and this is going to be more even. It's going to be at the Nicholas Sharon Park on the west side of that. It's all even, green grass. I can run barefoot if I want to. So it's going to be a good day. Yeah, no kidding. Sometimes there's a thing they say, hey, at your age and that, eh? But being 64, I don't feel 64. I so that some of my friends who are the same age as me, they're really having some issues with their health. And it's an old cliche, all you got to do is just watch what you eat and exercise. That's it. If you follow those 2 simple rules and that, you're gonna you'll feel better, you know, you're gonna look good, right? And then of course, you know, you are what you eat, right? You know, and I try to really eat well, especially in the mornings, most important one. You know, I'm gonna watch my cholesterol, uh, not a whole lot of fast foods, right? And I don't eat a whole lot of fast foods. You know how they say, I powwow, yeah, I powwow during the summertime and that, but I don't eat at the, I don't hardly eat at the fairs, at these places and at the food trucks. Because all it is just fried food. So we bring our own food. You know, the powwows. And we eat our own food. We bring a cooler and we drink lots of water and lots of fruit. And we don't eat fried bread either. It's one of the things we try not to do, which is a treat, right? Who doesn't like fried bread? So we're just going to wait a few more people to join. Who's here? We have Norma, Heather, Lacey, anybody else out there? We have 4 so far. Yeah. So this is our second session of our Blackfoot language, hosted by the Friendship Center. The Friendship Center, of course, they are doing some wonderful, wonderful programming here. As we speak right now, they're having moccasin making right upstairs and that, and there's quite a few people I've seen already walking through those doors and that. I'm not too sure how often they do that. If it's once a week or, but yeah, if you want to, either they provide you with all the material. All you just got to do is show up and have a teacher there and they show you step by step on how to make a pair of mocks. And they also have a youth program run by, I do believe his name is Chris Campbell, and it's a boxing program. So if you're into boxing and that, it's right here at the Friendship Center. That I just went to go and see what they have as far as equipment. Oh, they have huge gymnasium there for, you know, lots of room to do your thing. And that's running, I think, every evenings or twice a week. My son is over there as we speak now. He's probably hitting the punching bag. So, any questions from last week that you want to, before we go? So we decided we'll do about an hour and 20 minutes or so of, you know, the Blackfoot language and so forth. And we'll try to leave about the last 10, maybe 15 minutes in that if you have any questions of any sort, whether it's the class or you may have questions regarding other things other than what, you know, something that's maybe lingering in your, you know, in your thoughts and that, maybe we can clear that up. Anything, you know, the last 10 minutes in that. We'll try and make room for those questions. So this week, we're going to talk about the Blackfoot Confederacy. Language, as we know it, and that it allows us to, of course, communicate, right? Communicate our thoughts to each other. It allows us to have relationships, right? It also allows us to create the boundaries, which is within our societies, right? Create those boundaries. Language also helps us to learn, develop a much more higher vocabulary as you get into the, you know, elementary level, the primary, secondary. You know, as each grade and that, as you grow up in that, your vocabulary is, you know, it gets more and more expand, right? You know, you start to put your thoughts, the language that you speak, onto paper, right? Then you start writing memoirs, you start writing diaries, you start reading, right? Well, the language that we speak today, you know, there's 2 official languages that are here in Canada, of course, English and the French. But we live in a land that's called Canada, right? We don't speak Canadian, right? You know, we're Canadian, but we speak the language that was, of course, you know, the people that say they came across, and, you know, they stamped their flag in the name of King George and so forth. This is now the Crown line. So we speak English, right? English. And how we know that, of course, it's the official language of the Canadians, and of course French, the two official languages. So when they arrived, when I say they, the explorers, the John Smiths and the planes, when they landed on the coasts and that, they discovered a people, and in a sense they discovered in that they came across people who had already lived in this area. Very different from what they were accustomed to in that, like England, they had a monarchy system. They already had a writing system. They already had a school system. They had a police system, and the language dictates that, right? They had a hierarchy. There's these people here, the decision makers, the government, and you got the people that work within those capacities and that. Then you got your people, right? And there's a very class structured type of society, right? The monarchies and so forth. But when it came into the North America and that, right? We're going to talk about not necessarily Columbus, but here, and through the memoirs of Columbus and that, they probably followed, the writings. There's Indians. You're going to discover that there's Indians already living in this area, and that, right? So they came across and they came east. As they were coming, expanding their empires and so forth, and that, they started noticing that each group, as you keep coming west in that, right, there's a different group of people that speak entirely different from the Indians of the Canadian Shield, right? The coastal Indians and that, the woodland Indians and so forth. And they came into the plains, and they start discovering the plains culture, right? The Great Plains of North America, right here all the way down to Texas, right? The buffalo culture. And each group in that spoke a language that was different from the last group that they were met, right? Then Lewis and Clark. Okay, we need to send. How far does this North America expand in that? Let's explore. So the explorers in that, some of the people that were already here before Lewis and Clark. I'm talking about Anthony Henday, the fiddler individuals. Those people that came west in that, and they drew certain individuals here, right? They already talked about, there's a vast expanse out here, right? So Lewis and Clark, away they went. As they're trekking west in that, they knew that, there's got to be a mountain range. Because where's all this river coming from, right? So as they were traveling west in that, of course, they ran into a group of people in what we would call North and South Dakota in that area. And as they were traveling, they were asked, the scouts and the individuals over there, what are the next group of people we're going to be running into as we're traveling west? And, the people of the Dakotas, and it could be the Mandan, the Iroquois, or it could have been the Sioux. They told them, you're going to be running into the Blackfoots. The Blackfoots are going to be over at the foothills, at the edge of the mountains there. You're going to run into the Blackfoots, right? And we'll talk about this, the expanse of the Blackfoot territory in that, right? So as they were coming, of course, they did run into it, right? And one such story is that when they got off their boats, coming up into the, it's all river valley, as they came up into the plains and that, who did they run into? It's like three young, and they're saying in their memoirs, some Piikani or pagan, you want to call it, or Blackfoots, three of them. And the moment they seen them in that, the three warriors, right away, they just charged them. And they thought they were going to have a conflict or confrontation right then and there. But just all of a sudden, the three warriors, they stopped, right? They stopped, and they probably seen them, they're looking at them, so they turned back around and they rode away. knowing full fact that, they're going to go get some more individuals or warriors, they'll be back, right? That was the first contact. So that was the first contact, and they wrote down in their memoirs, Blackfoots. There was born the name Blackfoots. It wasn't a name that was given to us. So that's not what we call ourselves. But we're going to get into what we call ourselves as far as individuals, right? So we occupied this area, huge area, right? And it wasn't like in a sense that we warred with everybody in that, because there was when the George Gatlin first came into this area, and as he was drawing and Fiddler later on, and that he came into an area somewhere in the Montanas, and it had a huge camp, just a huge camp. And in that camp, they figured that there were not only the Blackfoots, but there was they call, well, they're called Gros-Bonds, but that's another misinterpretation. Gros-Bond, of course, is a French word for big belly, right? Gros-Bond. But they were all camped all in a huge area, and that we're talking about you couldn't tell who the chief was, because everybody just lived very much the same in that, right? You can't say, okay, there's the chief over there, he's got the biggest speed and that so forth. That was one of those observations that they had. Very big community living and so forth. So the word Blackfoot was given to us, not by ourselves, but another group of First Nations people from the Dakotas and that. And I've asked, like you, of course you read it, but it's through our stories and that. And some will say it was the Mandan that gave us the name Black. And others will say, no, it was the Sioux. They're the ones that gave us the Black name, right? So that's when Lewis and Clark, we became the Blackfoots and that. So it is written on the literatures and any books that were written regarding the individuals, the groups of people that occupied the Blackfoot territory. It was all written, and of course, Blackfoots, they went out. So this whole area is all Blackfoot territory, right? We'll show you a map of our land and that, but just to give you an idea of the land base that the Blackfoots had, and I think about the South Saskatchewan River, which is Edmonton, right? Way up in Edmonton. Of course, the west over here, the Rockies, all the way down, all the way up to the South Saskatchewan River. And the expanse went north a little bit, the river, and it came down almost by Regina, right? The city of Regina, it's, what is it, about a 6-hour drive to get there. And it goes down right into the Montana, into the Yellowstone and west, right? And that was a huge, huge expanse of land in that. We're going to talk about later on, some of the contacts that we had and in the areas, right? When we start talking about powwow and that, we're going to talk about how we acquired the big drum and so forth and that. And it happened not only here, but it happened in an area way down in Saskatchewan, almost into the Dakotas, where we've acquired the big drum. Okay, so let's talk about the Blackfoot Confederacy. And hopefully you have, I want to pull it up. Sue hopefully got you this. It's the Blackfoot Confederacy, the groups of people that speak the language, okay? There are basically 4 groups called the Blackfoot Confederacy, but in our culture, we call ourselves something different, okay? When I say within our group and that, let's say the Bloods, the people up north, the Siksika, and everybody calls them the Pagan, but we call them Piikani, and the Southern Piikani, and that, it was a group of people that called each other by something different, right? So going to number 1, the first group of people that speak the same language as everybody else is called, and it's spelled, and people will say Kainai, right? But it's Gaina.
Gain,
The right pronunciation is Gaina.
gain,
Gaina.
gain.
Kainai. Gaina. Now what that is that a group of people, it might have been the Siksika or the Pigani, they came into the area where Gaina was, right? And they made these observations and that because we really observe the environment, right? You know, the moons and you know the land bases and so forth, you know, the animals and that. We have to study them in the sense that in order to live in a very vast area, we need to understand the seasons. We need to understand, you know, the land. We need to come to understand the animals and so forth, some of their behaviors and so forth, when to hunt them, right? It's a very observational. So that's how the language operates as well, too. Very descriptive, verb-based, right? It's almost pictorial when you speak the language and that. You can actually see the language as we hear it, right? It's like reading a really good novel, you know, like as you read the novel and then you can already picture, you know, the backdrop, right? That's how the language works, isn't it? You can almost see what that person is sharing with you in Blackfoot. So they came into the area where the Bloods were, and they made an observation of that. And you know, they'd say, well, okay, who is your leader? Or you're a chief in that, right? So different people started saying, oh, I'm the chief. You know, I'm the chief here. You know, go another group of people, and then maybe this group will say, no, well, yeah, he's the chief, but he's a chief also over there, that individual. You know, so they through their observations and that, oh, you know, these people have many leaders within themselves, right? So thus became Gaina, the many chief people. So if you want to write that beside there, Gaina means many chiefs. And that's how we were born. It was another group within ourselves that gave us that name, right? Gaina. And of course, today, the Gaina Reserve is just a little bit southwest of Lethbridge, a huge area. In fact, the Blood Reserve, or Gaina, is the largest land-based reserve in all of Canada, the largest. We are now at 15, if not more than that, but there were over 15,000 people occupying what we call Gaina. So we are the Gaina, you know, the people of many chiefs. It was given to us by the other groups. So say that, Gaina, not Kaina. Say it, Gaina, 2 syllables. Gaina.
Gain,
Yeah, Gaina, not Kaina.
gain,
Gaina. And understand
gain.
too, like when you say that word, Gaina, think of people that have many leaders, right? Think of the House of Commons. Hey, just argue over there. Hey, Mr. Speaker, blah, blah, blah. They started arguing. I don't think we were like that too, but you know, but just imagine that, you know, these are the people that had many, many leaders, right, within themselves. You know, so collectively in that, they probably got along. They, you know, they knew that there are certain individuals took leadership roles. So within themselves, they were able to be a community of people in that, right? You know, they didn't hear of any arguments or some of the stories that say, oh, you know, such and such, he rose against it, you know, they had a rebellion. No, none of that happened in that. And we'll talk about that too. So the Gaina, the many chief people. Okay, you got that? Gaina. Say that. Gaina.
Gain,
Gaina.
gain.
Hey, good. So, many chief people. So that's one group. When we talk about where did they occupy in this land basin, and where were they mostly? And just my recollection, you know, through the stories of that, you know, the Bloods or Gaina, they roamed the areas of the Saskatchewan in that area, right? Into the Dakotas, you know, the plains that are east Okay. In fact, when they signed Treaty Number 7, the people, they must have understood that, the Bloods, the Kaina, they were in an area east of here. That was pretty well their land base. So when they signed the treaties and that, Red Crow and so forth and the other minor chiefs, they signed it not knowing that they were going to be placed in an area in near Medicine Hat along the, what river runs through Medicine Hat? Is that the Old Man River or South Saskatchewan? But anyways, the river that lands, Medicine Hat and that kind of east, very arid, dry land and that, right? That was originally the reserve that was going to be given to us down east. So my guess was, Ghana, they must have been in that area mostly. Okay? But when they signed Treaty Number 7, of course, they made the signature, and then Red Crow and a bunch of the Ghana, they went on a large buffalo hunt. They went into the Montanas, and they had a very big buffalo. One of the last ones, 1877. Upon arrival, and then they didn't know that that was their reserve. And so the Red Crow said, "No, we don't want to live here. We want to live in our traditional territories during the winters and that." So they renegotiated with the governments, and they gave us this reserve. That's just right here, the Old Man River on one side, the St. Mary's River on the other side, the Belly River. There's about 3 rivers that run through our reserve. So that was Ghana. A little bit of history there. And the second group, I'm going to go north, okay, are literally the Siksika. The second group, the Siksika, and it literally means, the word Siksika is the Blackfoots or the Blackfeets, right? The Blackfoots, they are the Siksika. And of course, it was either the Kaina people or the Bikani made another observation in that. If you look at there's 2 stories I heard. If you look at the northern part where the Siksika occupies in it, there's a lot of swamp land in that, right? It's very swampy in that area. There's a lot of marshes and so forth on it. And of course, you have to walk through there in your moccasin, right? Regardless of, if it's spring, summer, you got to travel, through those elements and then go through those areas. And your moccasins were pretty well going to get pretty muddy and black, right? So maybe it was the Kainai people that went into that area. Maybe they met. And of course, through our observations, we looked down and it seemed that, there's all these people that moccasins are pretty black. Thus, they became the Siksika, the Blackfoot people, the black moccasin people. Second story is that, the hunters of the Blackfoots, what they would do during the springtime is that they would have a burn, like a very controlled burn of certain areas, and they would just let it, the grass burn all the way down into the river valleys and so forth, and that, right? And it comes spring, fresh green grass would start growing and that. And one of the most delicious meals a buffalo would like to eat. So they come to us, right? You start eating that nice fresh green grass and that. But in the meantime, you got this whole area of just this black soot grass and that. And of course, you got to walk through there, right? So you got to travel probably through an area of real charred grass, and by the time you get to the other side, your moccasins are going to be pretty black. So that was another story of that, right? The black moccasin people, the Blackfoot, Siksika. And that's what we call them. We still call them that, Siksika. And that's the name that they give themselves, Siksika. So any entities that over here, they'll say it's the Kainai Children's Services, the Kainai Sports Center, the Kainai Blood Tribe Police Services, and that. So they take up those names in that, right? Siksika Health Services, the Siksika Road Services, that they use that Siksika as as their what do they call it, their theme, not their theme, but on their letterheads. But anyways, Siksika and other people that we share the language. If I went to Siksika, I went to Calgary, and of course, I met some Siksika people there. My auntie, she's lived up there for over 75 years, so she's really taken in the community. You can speak Blackfoot to anybody, as a speaker and that. If I go up there, I meet somebody that speaks the language, and we understand each other really well. Or there's maybe just a little tweak, in the accent, but for the most part, we share. It's a very common language, right? The skies, the sun, the land base, and so forth, and how we identify themselves in that. Oh, it's Magan Fruit. Siksika. Oh, you're Siksika. They're the people of the north. So when you talk about maybe the land base of Siksika, the Blackfoot, Siksika, they probably roamed the area that's in the Red Deers, the Red Deer north, all through there, and that was probably their land base. In a sense, like the there's the Gaina, and in north you got the Siksika. And then the third of the Blackfoot language speakers, I really have issues with that word pagan. I don't know where that came from, but it's really be gunny. Okay? Be gunny. If you look at the spelling, we talked about this, remember? How the P is a buck sound. You say be gunny. Okay? And of course, it was either the Siksika or the Gaina. They must have seen a group of the Picani in the area. Maybe they had another huge camp or so forth and that. And they must have camped in certain areas, right? So it is the Siksika, there's Gaina, and maybe on this side, the west of the camps, we have the Picani. So they have these huge camps and that. So they start making these observations and that. Oh, boy, these guys have black moccasins, Siksika. And these people over here, they just have numerous leaders in that, so they must be the Gaina. And you go to the Picani. How they got that name, though, there's they're not necessarily conflicting in that, but there are two stories to this. One such story is that Picani means Scabby Road, the Scabby Road people, Picani. It was a time of the buffalo, right? You made your clothing with all the buffalo and that, just probably very hard, tedious tasks and that, you got to scrape the hairs off, the animal, you got to can it and so forth and that, right? And then you got to cut it, your pattern into your clothing, your tops, your bottoms and so forth. And of course, moccasins, right? All that has to be made. So, during the process of maybe canning, as they were canning, maybe scraping off, the hairs of the buffalo, they must have left little pieces of, meat on the hides and that, right? And, you scrape yourself and that, they'll have to scrape later on, it's scab. But the same thing with, the animal. They'll have scabs on the garments and that. So you start to cut off your patterns that you're going to make. And you start to notice, that there's an individual over there still has a little piece of meat that's scabbed on the, and you start to notice that, okay? Maybe not just one individual, but maybe a group of 10 people and that had scabs on their garments. Thus we became the Picani, okay? The Picani people, the Scabby Road. Another story is that, what the first word you say, be is a word we use for something that's very not well sewn. And I see this in I'm starting to see this in fashion and that they buy blue jeans and that they already have big holes on their knees and they're all shredded around the laps right here, right? So we call that skate bee. They're just not, just starting to rip, right? very ripped up garment and that, right? And if you have a bag that's kind of shredded on one side or the seam started to come apart, we call that B, right? It's ripping. So in a sense, B gunny, it could be in a sense ripped garments, right? You know, maybe it's at the seams where they were sewn and that might have come apart and it's become, you know, they just don't have, you know, the necessary tools at that time, you know, to patch them up on that. So that's another story. They'll say poor robe people, but the word poor does not describe, you know, be gunny. Because, you know, the Western thought of poor is not the same thought as we think as indigenous people, and it's a different thought process. So be gunny, scabby robe, or you know the ripped up garment people, right? They're very escape be, you know. Maybe one person there might have had didn't have enough hide, so maybe just put a fringe right here, but he had a full one, right? You know the ones that you buy over at Winners, you know your sleeves are about like that. Eh? But that's the three people. When I say three people, how did it become four? Okay, so the Piikani people were one big group, right? There was just one Piikani people in that. So, you know, the United States, of course, they kicked out the British, and then the Canadian side, and that you had loyalists who remained loyal to the crown. So they said, okay, let's divvy up our land and that, you know. So they started building the railroads as they were coming west and that. And they were creating borders, right? This is going to be Canada and that's the United States. And that. They started coming. And lo and behold, when they came into the Blackfoot territory, so to speak, and that, they cut off the Piikani right over here. And the Piikani, they seem to be foothills people in that. So, you know, when you think about where did they occupy that? If you think about where they are now, very close to the mountains and that. So they're very, in this area right here, this would be the Piikani territory, foothills, eh? So they cut them off. So now we have Amskapi Piikani, and then we call these people here the Batkosa Piikani, the north and the southern Piikani, which makes four groups. But in essence, at the border, cut them off. Now we have four Blackfoot languages. Okay? So we have Piikani, Amskapi Piikani. So the people in the Blackfeet, so they go into Montana, those are the same people as us. We speak the same language. They are the Amskapi Piikani. So if I go over to Siksika and I go over to Piikani to visit, and I go to Amskapi Piikani, the Browning areas and that, I run into somebody that speaks the language, we'll totally understand each other. We speak the same language. Very, there's nothing different about the language. So, four groups, let's go through them. And now keep in mind, the names, right? The names mean something. It's the people, not the land base. Now, you and I are Canadians because we live the land base of Canada, right? But these people are not, they speak what we call Blackfoot. We all understand each other. And we're going to talk a little bit about what we call our language, right? So, Gaina, say that. Gaina.
Gaina.
Gaina. Snap your fingers.
Gaina.
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 Gaina. Okay? Second group are the Sik gods. 3 syllable. Sik God. Okay? Sik God. Now think of people with black moccasins, right? The Sik God. Not necessarily their feet, it's their moccasins. Okay? We're not talking about, you know, you say, hey, go wash your feet. It's their moccasins, right? When you think about, you know, why they call them that, you know, it's probably far and in between before you get your next pair of moccasins. So you probably have to wear them right out. And then, you know, then you got to have a good hunt, right? You got to go out there and have lots of buffalo hides. You got to come back, and it's a tedious process in that, right? Now think of the tools that they use. You know, today we would just go to Home Depot or get all the tools we need to scrape and, what's a fabric place here? Get all your fabric. You go to the craft store, Michael's, get your needles and so forth. Well, back then, oh my goodness, you know, you think about just even to make a pair of moccasins. Well, first you need the animal, right? And then you got to go over there. There's huge buffalo, and you got to cut it. You got to strip its hide. You take the hide, and you bring it back to your camp. So you got to lay it out, right? And then you got to start scraping it off, right? Scraping off the hairs and that. And not only that, but you got to tan it, right? To a very, very fine tan so it's nice and soft. And then you put together your moccasins. You got to put the pattern of your feet. And then what are you going to use for a pen, right? Where is your pen in that? Nowadays, when you start making moccasins, you get a paper, you get a pen, and you draw out your pattern. Well, back then in that, okay, what you put there, you know, is it through memory, or do they have something as ink, you know, draw out the pattern and so forth, right? Then you got to put it together. So, you know, it's very tedious. You know, I really commend, you know, those individuals that you can make them right from the raw materials we call the buffalo. How many do we got? Is there anybody new?
I think Daniel's new.
Who's that? Daniel? Okay.
Heather.
Heather?
Okay,
Heather, how do you say your last name? Heather?
black.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, Heather Satochtsi. Satochtsi.
Yes. Sapolsky.
Okay, Satochtsi.
Uh-huh.
Because we have two Heathers.
Ah,
Heather Satochtsi and then Heather Black, right?
ah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I just had, before we move along, maybe introduce yourselves and tell us where you're from, your occupation, just a little brief. I'm gonna, of course, Nadine, you were here last week. We won't do you, but right here, Daniel C. Can you introduce yourselves to our audience and what you do for work? No, I'll introduce myself. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Julius Delaney. Yeah, Delaney. Doesn't sound black, but yeah, but it's my last name. I was a Blackfoot language teacher since 96, 97 at a school called Safeway, right here in our community of Standoff. And I taught the elementary, and I stayed teaching the elementary right until I retired in 2018. I took an early retirement package. I wanted to be rehired here in the city at a childcare center, and I worked there for 2 years. Again, Blackfoot language. When we talk about the Blackfoot language, and of course we talked about, you know, the 4 groups, right? Collectively, the 4 groups, Ena, Sitsuka, Amskapi, Pikani, and Pikani, we figured there's about 50,000 of us, right? 50,000 registered Blackfeet people. And out of that total population, the last census, I want to say there was about 2012, 2020. There was only 2,000 speakers of the Blackfoot language out of the total population of 50,000. So we're talking about a total, I'm going to say, if you work with elementary school students and that, your entire population does not speak Blackfoot. The parents of those elementary school students do not speak Blackfoot. So we're talking about 48,000 registered Blackfoot Indians or First Nations people that don't speak language. Very small. According to the Canadian, the demographics that they do, they've labeled languages as endangered, extinct, or they're still speaking the language at home and that. We're almost endangered, if not already endangered at that right now, according to the categories and that as far as First Nations. So, you know, we're a very critical point in time that we try to revitalize the language. That's why we have these language classes, right? Whether it be students, whether it be, elementary school students, junior high, senior high, post-secondary, or parents for that. We want to get that language out there. We want to get people to film so that we can have a library of all the language out there. We do have a huge library at the adult right now. Me, doing all this black. So, okay, let's go back to the introductions. We'll go with Daniel. Introduce yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So Daniel is my husband. I'm not technologically advanced, but we are taking this together, and he's a plumber full time. Daniel's part of Gaina, and we have 4 children, and we want everyone to speak Blackfoot in the home. So this is how we are starting together, and we're doing this very seriously.
Good. Awesome. Good to hear.
And we're from Okotoks.
Yeah. You're from Okotoks.
Okotoks, yeah.
That's where you're living right now?
Right now, yes.
Oh, wow, welcome.
Thank you.
Hey. Yeah, we had a person from last week. We had a person from Jasper, right? And we had one from
I'm here.
There you are. I don't know if you want to reintroduce yourself to their. Yep.
I'm Larissa. My ancestry is mixed. On my dad's side from the Gunny people. My mom's a settler, and I am wanting to reconnect after being disconnected because of the child apprehension system from the Indigenous part of my heritage. And this is a really important step for me. And I'm really, really grateful to you teaching and to the Friendship Center for hosting Zoom.
Exactly. Zoom. Nadine, I don't know if you want to reintroduce yourself there. No? Okay. We already introduced. Norma, do you want to speak? Norma. You there?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here. Okay, so yeah, Norma Wolfchild, and I'm from the Blood Tribe, Ghana. I'm here with my family, my husband and my son who want to learn. So Marlin Many Gray Horses and Mason Many Gray Horses. So we're here learning.
Just in your house.
Yeah, I know. I know Blackfoot. I speak Blackfoot.
Good.
But I'm just doing this as a refresher.
Good. Yes, not too many of us eat seafood, right? I find that it's just like anywhere you go. Like this past weekend, I only bumped into 2 people that speak the language, and they're from Sitsikat. And lo and behold, they were older than me. Like in a sense, I'm 64, so they must have been in their 70s. So like people, you're hard pressed to find anybody younger than me or that speak the language, right? They have to be older than me. So like our population in that, it's dwindling, the speakers. So I'm looking at, okay, I'm gonna go visit that person. And depending on, his age, well, if it's somebody younger than me in the 40s or so forth, they're not gonna know the language. It all has to be English. Hey, who won the hockey game? You're gonna watch football tomorrow? That seems to be the conversation. But in Blackfoot, it's an entirely different visitation. Very different. The dialogue is going to be different than that. There's not a whole lot of Western influence in the language that we speak. It's very family oriented, very community based, and that, it's very personal, right? Whereas English and that, who's going to win the elections next, so, that seems to be the top, very Western. Heather, you have 2 Heathers. Heather Sato, see. We'll hear from you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. My name's Heather Lewis across the mountain. I'm from Gainai, 44 years old, and I'm just really wanting to connect and learn the language because I've heard that it is becoming extinct, and that made me really sad. So I'm just like, well, it's my responsibility to keep this going. So I've just looked it up, and now I'm here.
Awesome.
Yes.
Anybody else want to speak? Who else is on here?
Okay, this is Heather.
Okay.
Nistunan Otakitsawaki. I'm signing on with my mom. My mom is listening to Na Seraphine, and her Indian name is Umskniskim. So we're both, yeah, and we're both in Calgary, so Mumskinsis. So, and we both have COVID, so we're just enjoying this. We're COVID talk for today.
Yes, well, I'm glad you're all here. And we want to share as much as we could. Okay, so we know the 4 people that speak the language. We know that it's a very distinct, unique language. There's no other people in the world that speaks the language of the Blackfoots. Nobody else. Here is such a story. Next month, and in the next couple of months, November the 11th, we're going to be celebrating, of course, Remembrance Day, right? Why I say our Blackfoot is so unique in that, like the Navajo code talkers of World War II, in Canada, of course, we participated in World War II just as, we went to go help out, the Crown. 2 individuals from Guyana enlisted. One person's name is John Callow, and his brother, Harold Quannell. Blood brothers, they're just, they were brothers and that, but they were probably raised by 2 different families, right? Quannells in the town. So they enlisted. Off they went to war. While they were in, I'm not too sure if they were in Germany or if they were coming off, one of the marches that they were doing, and that the company that they were both in separated. Somehow the Germans had occupied an area where they had to go around, right? So they had to separate, or a small company was lost during the process that they were trying to meet at a rendezvous. Knowing that these 2 people spoke a language that couldn't be deciphered by the Germans or anybody else, they used these 2 individuals to communicate with each other, so that this lost company, which had one of the 2 brothers, and the main company, which had another brother, and they communicated in Blackfoot back and forth, indicating, their whereabouts, the dangers that lied ahead, and they were able to communicate in Blackfoot and successfully reunite. That's why our Blackfoot is so important, in the sense there's no other language like it anywhere, right? And knowing the language, we know who we are based on the names that we give ourselves. Guyana, right? We must have been people that had lots of chiefs, but on the same token of that, each individual's leadership was honored, right? No one leader was trying to overrun the next one, right? It was just a given fact that these people had many leaders. So they call them the Guyana, okay? And Blackfoot, I just wish, in the 1960s where I grew up, 100% of my household spoke Blackfoot. 100% of my community, if not 99% of my community in that spoke Blackfoot. We went visiting, huh? We didn't visit like this. We visited face to face to households and that. And we visit these houses with my grandparents and that. And we knew these old people based on their Blackfoot names, not on their English names and that. So we go say, well, oh, okay. We knew who they were, right? And then we visit and then sit down, and it's all just dialogue. Blackfoot, Blackfoot, Blackfoot. Visitations, and then, like I said, it was very personal language in that, right? They didn't really talk about politics or anything like that. It's just a very subtle, they laid back and they start smoking and rolling their cigarettes, and the place would just be smoking. And they'd be visiting till hours, way late at night and that, and they would go home. But that's how it was. Where I started really seeing the language kind of going the other way, in the sense that, the speakers, was probably in the 70s. We started seeing the language kind of, dwindle away. But we still had a lot of speakers in our community of Guyana. I want to say 90%. 80s, you know, the numbers of speakers started, you know, dwindling, so forth and that. And then, you know, like the pyramid of speakers, right? You know, so all these people are, you know, then it started going into the 90s, and now we're into the 2000s, and I think got this huge pyramid of Blackfoots, and it's up here are your speakers, and all the rest down here are non-speakers. Just within the what 5 decades, the language whew, going out the door, and there's a lot of variables. There's a lot of factors. I speak to people. It says, how is it that you didn't lose your language when you went to residential school? I'm a residential school survivor, and I still speak Blackfoot. Amongst themselves, the supervisor is not always around, right? So when they leave, you know, they all talk in Blackfoot. You know, they all visit in Blackfoot, and you know, they know when not to talk, right? So if the supervisor or the nun or so forth comes by, you're just quiet, right? But the moment you start talking Blackfoot, of course, there's going to be punishment. But again, none of that language was lost at the residential school. I think it's when they left, knowing that, you know, English is going to be a dominant language, the culture of the English, the Western culture is going to be dominant. You know, we have to teach our children, you know, so that's where English started being much, much more important, because the world is going to be English, right? The occupation that you're going to be pursuing is going to be in English, right? You know, gone are the skills of, you know, tanning and so forth, and that you're going to live in a world that's all English. So a lot of variables, a lot of factors that came into play while our language and that. And of course, nobody visits anymore. We just text. And I'm not very good at this phone myself for that. I just like going on YouTube, lots of power. Anyways, glad to meet you all. So let's expand. Gana Bigani. Okay, turn your pages. Now, Blackfoot works in the sense that you take a compound word, like a word, and you take another word and you put them together and it creates a meaning, right? And it's just the same as football, a baseball, right? You know, it's very compound. Sometimes there's a root word, there's a suffix, and there's a prefix that creates the word. Is it first person meaning, second person, third person? And it all depends on the prefix, right? And a suffix is going to indicate your time. Is it now that's happening? Did it happen in the past? Or are we talking about something that's going to happen in the future, right? That's where the suffix is, okay? And then we are going to use these 4 words as your prefix to indicate this person is from that community, okay? So I'm going to go to right here to the beginning. No, to Ghana. So a man that's from Ghana, like myself, right, will say Ghana one, okay? So what we're going to do with that word, oh, excuse me. Can you all see this board? Okay, so we're going to take Ghana, just like that. And your suffix over here is going to be this right here. Guan. You put those 2 together and you say Gane Guan. Say Gane Guan. A man from Kainai or a man from Ghana. Like myself, I would be a Gane Guan. Okay? And if you know anybody that's from Ghana, that is a Gane Guan. Okay? And that's how we identify ourselves from the communities that we come from or the people that we come from. Oh, he's a Gane. Okay. We also know that, you know, we occupy a land base that's called a reserve. So it's called Ghana. So not only are they a people, it is now a land base, you know, the reserve, right? Ghana. That's the place that we live, right? It's not only It's just like Canada, no? Okay, he's a Canadian, a man from Canada. And it's spelled like this. You know, like your first Kainai, Canaan. All they do is add Koan, Canaan. Say it. Canaan. Now look at me when you say that. Canaan.
Gay
Yeah. Canaan. So somebody will say, do you know anybody from Canaan? Yeah, I know a Canaan. Julius Delaney. Yeah, exactly. So anybody that's from the male from Cana is a Canaan. Okay? That's how we identify ourselves. We need to identify ourselves as people, right? Collectively, yeah, we're Blackfoots in that. But at a micro level, that we need to know, oh, okay, he's a Pikani. He's a Siksika. He's a Canaan. You do that to all other three individuals groups. So Pikani, the Scabby Road people, a male from Pikani is a Pikani Guan. You just keep adding that Guan on. Do you know anybody from Pikani? Anybody? I'm married into the Pikani. So I know lots of people from Pikani. Pikani Guan, male from Pikani. Okay? So you got Kene Guan, Pikani Guan. Okay? Yeah? Got it? Before we move along. So let's go to Siksika. A male man from Siksika is a Siksi. Now you have to make it flow. It won't be a Siksik. You'll say Siksikay Guan. You got to make that flow. You'll say Siksikay Guan. Okay? Not Siksika Guan. Siksikay Guan. Right? It's almost like you put in a, instead of a Y, you put an IES, you know, the same idea. You got to make that language flow. Siksikay Guan. Okay? So, when I talk, Gane Guan, and when I do this, it means Pikani, right? So the scabby robes. Pikani Guan, right? Siksika, just point to your feet, you know, just make a little ring like this and just point down. And like that. Siksike Guan. Okay? All right, so now you have the people of the Blackfeet, the Montana. Ska Pikani, Southern Pikani people. Ska Pikani Guan. That's the longest one of the four. Okay? So those are the males from those communities. Guan. Gane Guan. Gane Guan. Gane Guan. Hey, here's a song. You guys know The Farmer in the Dell? Now you know The Farmer in the Dell. The Farmer in the Dell. Okay? Now, listen. Gane Guan. Gane Guan. Gane Guan. Gane Guan. Sing it. I want to hear it. Gane Guan.
Guan,
Gane
guan,
Guan.
guan, guan.
Yeah, there you go. Now keep singing that. Now picture somebody from Ghana, a man, right? When you sing that. Okay? Guan. Guan. That's me. Okay? Now, Pikani Guan, okay, and that's a man from Pikani, a scabby robed male person. Okay? Pikani Guan, Pikani Guan, Pikani Guan, Pikani Guan. Kind of went off on it. But yeah, hey, we try to put some music into these, and you can remember them, right? And we give our students some of our instruments. We'll have drums, we'll have cymbals, bells, and so forth, and we sing them. And it's usually something that's 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, right? And in some of those songs, they do that, right? You just keep repeating. And pretty soon when they're playing, they're singing. Gane Guan, Gane Guan, Gane Guan, Gane Guan, Pikani Guan, Pikani Guan, Pikanikuan, Pikanikuan. Okay? Now, a man from Siksika. Siksikakuan, 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 Siksikakuan. Yeah, Mskabi Pikani is not going to fit in there, so I don't think we can put a 3-beat to Mskabi Pikani. So we're going to think of a new song for that one. But you don't get the gist, right? Your suffix is Kawan. The first part of your prefix is going to be the people of those, the community, right? Siksika, Amikana, Pikani, Siksika, Mskabi Pikani. That's the first part. The second part, the Guan, is going to indicate the male. Remember, male, the male person, okay? Okay, moving along. Now, we're going to add a different suffix, and it's a woman. And it's a very, very easy name, easy word to say. It's a 3-letter word, A-K-I, Aki. Not Aki. Remember the A is like a sound. The K is a G. Aki. Say it. Aki. So think of yourselves in that. We're very fortunate that we have an Aki. Come, Sue, come. Let's have a visual. So Sue is an Aki. Okay? Now think of yourselves as Aki, all the women. That's what you are, Aki. So a person from those communities, again, very easy. You put Gena and Aki together to make a compound word. Genaki. 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 Thank you. Did you see that? You can call yourselves that Norma, Heather, right? You call yourselves Genaki, according to the community, right? If you come from Gena, you're a Genaki, okay? Is Gena in there? Yeah, right there. Right, the number 3. Yep. So, if you're from Pikani, from the community of Pikani, we're talking about the northern parts. You're a Pikanaki. 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 And that's who I'm married to the community of Pikani. So my wife is a Pikanaki. Huh? Right? Ganekuan, Pikanaki. And there's, that we have the same language. If I go to Pikani, into their family, and if there's somebody within that family that speaks Blackfoot, oh my goodness, and we're going to just talk in Blackfoot. So, just those 4 words, and then we've kind of expanded our language, right? Okay? You see how we just used Gaina, Sitsika, Pikani, and Amskaba Pikani as our suffix, our prefix word. Just add a suffix and then it creates a whole new word in that, right? And I can always visualize, right? He's from Gaina, one. He comes from the community of many chiefs, right? He doesn't really apply to the people now, in the sense we don't practice that culture anymore. Because that was a culture of old, right? Like these names have been around thousands of years, right? We're talking about a culture that were named at the days of the buffalo, right? So we're still calling ourselves that, even though we're in communities and reserves and that. But that's who we are, right? We are the many chief people. Okay. Siksika. A woman from Siksika is a Siksikaki. Siksikaki. Okay? Just point down like this. Then the sign language for a woman, put both your hands, palms backwards, and just go down, indicating you have long hair, right? Just like this. So a pikanaki, right? Yeah, so pikanaki, 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 right? And some of these old sign languages, they don't use them anymore. The Pikani indicate the southern and, of course, the northern, right? I'm not too sure. I think this is southern, or this is northern. I'll have to get that straight. But anyways, it's one of the other. Either you're southern or you're northern, right? But if you're Picani, right? Picanaki. So Sixagaki, and of course, the last ones are the Amska Picanaki. So say the whole word, Amska Picani and Picani. And you have it, right? They are from the southern Picani. Sue has got something for me. Show them off, Sue. We want to brag this up. The Friendship Center here has T-shirts to commemorate or to honor Orange Shirt Day, which is coming up at the end of the month. And Sue designed the shirt. It says, every child matters. That's the translation. Very important. It's another word we use that, you know, every child matters, but every child is important. Can you see that?
That's really beautiful, Sue.
Yeah,
That's really
she's our designer.
beautiful.
She's the one that's, I get to have one of these. See, Nadine, if you were here, you would have been going home with one of these.
If anyone is local and wants to pick one up, you can just come by the center.
They're free. Yeah, if you're near the center, if you want one of these, or Sue, if you give them your mailing address, maybe Sue can mail you. I don't know. Let's check them out. Yeah, residential school. Is this a large? Or is it XL?
XL. You want to work?
Let me try this. I think I'm gonna get an XL. That's a large. I'm gonna show it off. Yeah. Hey, check this out. Raw. So orange shirts. Nadine, you can come pick one up here at the center. Norma, anybody that's within the area here of Lethbridge, come pick one up. Sue's the designer, and they got lots of these here. Adult sizes, children's sizes, or
I think up to 3XL, and then the smallest we could get was like a small, but it's
an adult small. Yeah. So if you're small, medium, large, XL, double L, 3L, they're all here. Yeah. Yeah. So everybody, for those real big Indians. Anyways, okay. Now going back. Now, we created a very, very important part of the language in that, right? The people who speak the language in that, you know, and the culture of those people. And again, it's a very descriptive language, right? So the other communities gave us Kaina, and we gave a name to the Picani based on something characteristic of who they were, right? Not to say how they must have had a harsh winter, or maybe winter caught up to them fast. Because look at the area where the Picani, really close to the the foothills, and it always snows early in that, right, in this area. Well, who knows, maybe they got caught up in the winter, and so they had to do their garments quite fast and not really put some, and they've got the little pieces of meat on there, or maybe at the seams, they were coming apart. And it became the Picani, very descriptive of what we see, right, what we see them. And Siksiga, of course, with their moccasins, you got to get to the Walmart, Sport Chek's having a wicked sale right now. Get the moccasins taken care of that. But it's not always the case, back in those days, right? So that's, you have a group of people walking around with very dark moccasins, and that's the Siksiga. Visual, right? We've seen that. And that's the name we gave them. So we have vocabulary. We have the 4 people, and then the male, and then the female, right? I want to just, it's not in here in that, but one of the first peoples that came into this area, and of course, were some of the early explorers of George Gatlin, right? And the fiddlers, and of course, Anthony Hendays, those people that came into this area. But later on, there was a group of people in that decimated the buffalo, introduced alcohol in the form of whiskey, into the Blackfoots and that. So the name that we gave them, it's not in here. Everybody got a pen? Okay, there should be some. This is what we call them. The first part of your is this right here. Na, B, so N-A-P, na, 2 I's. And of course, your suffix sound is guan. Na, B, guan.
Not equal.
Yeah, not be guan. And that's the word that we use for the white man. That's the word we call them, the na, be guan. A male white man. Okay? And what does that mean? Of course, it's descriptive, right? There's a very descriptive language in that. Why do we call them Napi? Now, if you listen to some of the Napi stories in that, Napi was a very, in a sense, he behaved outside the social fabric norms of any communities within the Blackfoot Confederacy, right? We had social norms that we all lived by, right? We had our leadership, right? We had marriages. We had, we shared the wealth of the food. No one person had more than the other. So those are all social norms. And we didn't starve, we shared. Children were happy. Marriages were arranged. We're going to talk about that. We had arranged marriages, right? So those are some of the, the society norms that existed. Not be behaved outside the social norms of a camp, right? He would treat his women bad, right? He didn't share his food. One such story is that he tricked a coyote one time for his eyes, right? And he was so greedy that he killed a bunch of elk. And in the process, when he killed this elk, it had just an abundance of meat and so forth to feed a whole community. So, and one such animal came up to Napi and said, well, you have so much food here for everybody. Can we share? No. So those are some of the behaviors that Napi. He was just a very naughty story. There's Napi stories that they share with the women. Don't be like Napi. And then the men would share stories about Napi. Don't be like Napi and that. So in a sense, we used Napi to bring back the community, back to its level, its very social level. You start to go away from, the social fabrics of that. We're all, it's not going to work. So Napi was a trickster. He behaved badly. So when these people started coming in, started selling whiskey, and it started killing off the buffalo just for the sake of killing the buffalo. I don't know why. So they were Napi ones. They're behaving exactly what Napi would do. We would never behave that way, right? So the whiskey traders, when they came in, of course, they probably behaved really bad. They probably behaved in a sense that something that we've never seen. So, Napi, they seem to behave much more different than, how we would say, the social fabrics, the norms. So that's the Napi one. It's not because they're white, it's the culture, right? It's behaved very different from what we would call normal in our societies, our camps, right? Even their leaderships was much different, right? So, that's what we call them Napi one. Say that. Napi one. Again. Napi one. Napi one. Napi one. Why do we call them that? Because they behaved outside the social fabric of our community, right? And that's why we call them that. Napi one. They must have been very crazy, though, the first whiskey traders that came in there, right? So imagine, here is a people that lived thousands and thousands of years, community, leaderships, and so forth. It's a very unique society, in a sense, a very complex society, right? When you say complex, each person had a role, right? To have another person from across the ocean, coming to this area, and it just kind of like slaughter the animals, and they treat each other. They probably fight amongst each other, so forth, and and that's mine. That's not ours. so to speak. So that's what we call them, not people. So that's a male, okay? Male. You remember Gainek one? Well, a male, not one, is a white man. So a woman of the not be would be a not biat. Say that. Na biaki.
Napiaki.
Say it. Na biaki.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the woman just put the aki. Of course, it's in the same culture.
Napiaki.
Na biaki. Yeah. So na biaki, na one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the white man we call him that. And we don't call him that, eh? That my grandfather at that time, I used to have to interpret to my grandfathers, my grandmothers. That generation didn't speak English well, or didn't speak. My grandmother on my dad's side was born in 1898. She lived to be about almost 98 when she passed. So she was born, she lived through First World War, the Second World War, and she's seen the birth of, all the industrial revolutions that were coming, So, she never spoke she just spoke Blackfoot. And of course, that's where I grew up was in my Caribbean realm. On my mother's side, my grandfather never spoke a word of English, all Blackfoot. So we have to interpret for them, right? When we go to town, especially when we go to town. Try to go into a Western store and, okay, what size do you wear? What do you mean, what size do you wear? Like your waist, what's your waist and your length? I don't know, just give me a pants that'll fit on, It's quite tedious too, eh? Shopping for foods, because the foods that we eat now, Western, well, if you have to develop a language to describe these foods and so forth. We're going to do foods, by the way. So, any questions? That's where we're going to end up. Lots and lots of vocabulary. Think of out of the four groups, people that speak Blackfoot, we describe the male, the female. Kainekuan, Kainaki. Pikanikuan, Pikanaki. Siksikakuan, Siksikaki. Amskapi Pikanaki, Amskapi Pikanikuan, Amskapi Pikanaki. And we just kind of threw in there Na Pikuan and Na Piaki. Huh? So those are the people that are kind of right here in southern Alberta. The Blackfoot language speakers, and of course, the newcomers, I call them. They're still quite new, right? My grandmother's older than Alberta. Was born at the time when there's still Rupert's land, right? And my grandfather, he was born on my maternal side, born in 1912, the beginning of the Calgary Stampede, maybe about 1907 or something like that. It was quite the growing up with those type of people. They're very traditional. And you think about, like my dad, he lived to be 87 when he passed. So he was born in 1937, my dad. He passed away in 2021 at 85. But we don't know if that was his real age or not, because he had 3 different birthdays. And so he could have been older than what he was, because some of them, their baptismal certificates are actually their birth certificates. There wasn't a whole lot of good record keeping back then. So he could have been older. Even my grandmother, we figured she might have been over 100 years old when she passed. Paternal grandma. So, anyways, any questions? That brings us to 7:30. I thought we were gonna have the last 10 minutes, but do feel free to engage. If you think we need to better our sound, our lighting, or if you have any questions that you would like me to answer, or anything.
I really like the Napi one. I never really put those two together. Like the Napi, they were not the normal. They were, yeah. So it's good to put that together now.
Yeah, so you can understand why we call them Napi, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very different culture. very different people, all right, and how they engage themselves. And I throw, you know, we're very smart in the sense that we have to really live in this environment. We have to be aware. Right? You know, we have to be aware of the environment, you know, the seasons, right? The rivers, the land base, the animals, you know, we know there's migrating animals and when they come back, when there's spring thaw, you know, everything, right? We live in an area that we have to understand and live in, right? And the language indicates that. When something new comes in, like the not people, and those observations and that, you know, right away, hey, wait a minute, something's not right here, you know, within ourselves, right? Outside the normal fabric of ourselves. So we call them not people. Anybody else?
I had a couple questions, Julius.
Okay.
So you showed us the sign for woman, Aki. What's the sign for man, for Guan?
I'm gonna have to say it has to be something to do with the head.
Huh.
Yeah, I think it just pointed to the head, but I know that's Aki, right? I'm not too sure if there is a sign for Nina. Of course, when they say a Uga, right, you just point down, you know, indicating, you know, small. This Sitsimon, right? You just put your arms together, and that's kind of universal, Sitsimon, baby. Right? But for a man, an interesting question. I'd love to find that out. Because we're not a male, we're not a patriarchal society, meaning that males are not the head of the, you know, the camps. And sometimes the women are more powerful within the camps. Okay? You know, so when they came, you know, the Catholics and the Anglicans and that, of course, the head of the state was the king, the head of the state was the Pope, both male, right? Whereas in our societies and that, not necessarily the man is going to be the head of the, you know, the entire camp. Of that. Very different thought process in the leadership. You know, the monarchies, you know, the kings and so forth, male, very patriarch. We weren't like that. So they almost had to you know, turn our whole societies upside down so that, you know, the male is now the head of the house, right? But we weren't like that. You know, we said we were very much different than the patriarch Western societies. So I don't know.
Julius?
What do you think about the main signal?
The other question I wanted to ask you is, who's your wife? I want to find out if we're related.
What's that?
I want to find out if we're related. Who's your
You
wife?
and I?
Well, yes, because my, like I said, we're Bagani on my one side of my family, the Big Bulls and the Flamont.
Oh,
Are my
okay.
relations there? So who's
Well,
your
my
wife?
wife
Maybe
is
we're
actually,
related.
like, I'm from Guyana, but my
Yeah.
wife is from Bigani. And her last name, of course, is Bastine. But there's two
Ah,
Bastine, right? So her mom is a Pard. Pard,
Ah.
P-A-R-D. And the dad is a Bastine. You know, of course you
Ah.
take it, okay? And you break those further up than that, and then she told me that she brings down the sun. That was one of
Ah.
her, yeah. So I'll have to ask her, but that's her maternal is Pard and Sharpage. Maternal. And his paternal would be Bastine, and I just forget. But anyways, I'll have to ask her. But she's from Bigani, Bastine. Real, her names don't sound very much Blackfoot. Delaney.
lots of French. Related to Harley.
Yeah, Harley. They're quite, they're closely related to Harley. Big family of Bastines and all that. I think every other person is a Bastine. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't say that. So, anyone has questions before we go? Come pick up t-shirts from Sue. We got a whole bunch of t-shirts to give away. Sue designed this t-shirt. Can you see it? And you say,
Nice.
tutama psi ugex. Tutama psi ugex. Ugex is children. You know, every child matters. Meaning that Ututamapsi means they're very important. You know, the children are very regarded high, right? Not to say, hey, go outside and fight. You know, our kids are very important. Ututamapsi. Pukex.
Tutamapsi.
Ututamapsi.
Ututamapsi.
Yeah, ututamapsi. Yeah,
Mapsi.
that's how you say it. Ututamapsi, Pukex.
Okay.
And thanks, Sue. She designed it. There's all kinds of T-shirts out there. Sport Check has some. I even seen some at the Winners. I think the call. What's that? Yeah, Walmart. Your favorite. They have them there, and see for some of the drugstores. I think the London Drugs. They have them. They have their own design. I think all the T-shirts are different in design, but it's always going to be Ututamapsi Pukex. All child matters. And it's dedicated to us residential school survivors. That's me. I went to residential school, St. Paul's School in Ghana. And here I am. Yeah, I'm a survivor. So next week, we're going to expand on our language. We're going to still talk about, we're going to be very noun-based. And then later on in that, we'll start to do some of the descriptive verbs. But it's very noun-based. But each noun is a very descriptive noun, right? Kaine one is a noun, right? But it's also a people, right? The Medici people. Bikani Guan is a noun, but it describes who they are, right? It's those scabby-road people in that, right? And the Siksika, of course, is a noun, but it's a very descriptive noun. You know, the Blackfoot people. And these names have, they've been around for thousands and thousands of years since the days of the buffalo, right? They start to dig up some of the artifacts. They're saying, we keep digging at the head smashed in buffalo jumps. Every time you dig deeper in that, you're going hundreds of years. And they figure, it's over 10,000 years old, head smashed in buffalo. And there's numerous other jumps all, through this area. But two immediate, of course, head smashed in. And just over by south of Calgary, we have the Akipis, the women buffalo jump. I love that story. And I'll share that with you about why they call it the women's buffalo jump. Yeah, so. Okay, any more questions before we sign off? Nadine, Heather, Daniel, anybody? Norma? Thank you for joining us again. Next week, same time. Hopefully you can bring some more in and that. It's really easy to log in, right? Just go to
Going to promote the waiting room, because sometimes when people get disconnected, they have to waiting room until
okay.
have everything on.
Yeah, so we're really doing a lot of experimental stuff right now, and Sue has really developed this program, so we can bring it out to you, right?
Thank you, Sue.
Yeah, so thanks Sue for that. She's really doing so much. The mic here, I should see this mic. Really, it's huge mic. Remember the H. There's no words that we used in this vocabulary that had the H. So remember that. Okay, it's going to be coming up next week. Remember?
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to be using that next week. So remember, A-H, I-H, O-H, okay? H. You see that H? Think of guttural. All right?
Yeah. Yes.
So, thank you for joining me. Hey, thank you. And I'm going to teach you some more songs. And those of you who are interested in that, I do have a prayer. It's a prayer that was developed years ago that all our schools in kind of say this prayer, all the children. It's a 9-line prayer, and I'm going to teach you. It's just a very nice little prayer that we do, and it's being said at the Head Start level, the kindergarten level. They do it at the elementary level. The same prayer is said at the junior high level, middle school, and then they use it at the high school and that. So anybody that's gone through the KBE system, they know this prayer by heart. And I'll teach you that too as part of that. And it's a very meaningful prayer. So just really quick, take your right hand and bring it to your, not your heart, but to your spirit and say, hey, because Native people, we understand that language has a spirit and it has energy. Anything that comes out of your mouth and that, you can't take it back, right? So we really have to be careful, you know, in stuff that we say in that. So when these prayers are being said, or if your name is being mentioned, always be grateful. Hey, it's very positive energy that's coming out, right? You know, so did we have bullies? We probably had bullies. How did they take care of that? You know, so there's a lot of negative energy that probably within there's, you know, the camps and that they had to, you know, make corrections and that. And I was really interested in, okay, if they lived so well, then how did they get rid of, you know, somebody that's a real jerk, bully? So they must have had ways to deal with those individuals and that. And I'll share that with you too. Okay? Good. Sugapi, everybody?
Sugapi.
Sugapi.
Good.
Yeah.
Sugapi.
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 There you go. And we'll see you all next week. Okay?
Yeah.
Thank
see
you so
ya.
much.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Sugapi.
I love this shit. Can I grab a couple more?